Okay, Lance. What are we doing today?
We're going to talk about psychedelic rock, mainly from the '60s, late '60s era. Um, so I wanted to show these first. Uh, these are kind of more of the mainstream albums when people think about psychedelic rock. So you have, the Beatles moved kind of into psychedelic phase. The Doors, obviously, like some of their stuff is pretty trippy.
Soft Parade's real trippy.
Yeah. And then, you have various Jimi Hendrix works that, deep, heavy in that psychedelic
fall into that category.
vibe.
For sure.
But this stuff's not really what I want to talk about today, because these also fall into that classic rock stuff.
Iconic classic rock.
Yeah.
Sure.
I want to dig a little deeper. But I'm just curious, what would you describe psychedelic rock as?
Psychedelic rock is one of those like subgenres of collectors, and you find people that are specifically, and there are people in the herd and stuff that specifically collect just psych rock. For me, psych rock obviously started in the mid '60s, and sort of, with sort of the acid scene of the West Coast that was going on. You have a lot of bands like the Grateful Dead and Quicksilver Messenger Service and Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company and all those various sort of Bay Area bands created a psychedelic scene. But there was also an international psychedelic scene where there was a lot of call and response, and there were other pockets of weirdness throughout the country at that time. So I think that my understanding of psych rock is very limited, other than I kind of know to look for weird covers.
Yeah, I know, right? So to me, I always thought psych rock was music that would sound awesome if you were on LSD.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
No.
Right.
But, I mean, you can look it up, and, they're like, well, there's certain types of, like, guitar sounds and guitar riffs and various song structures and things that make something psych rock. And people can argue all day whether a particular piece is psychedelic or has hints of psychedelic.
Or indie or garage or lo-fi or, there's all kinds of ways to kind of categorize this stuff. And I think that's one of the ways that we're trying to explore a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I'm no expert on psych rock. I'm just getting into this. I'm exploring. And this is just going to be a list of some records that I found that are kind of cool, and some of them are iconic, but I've enjoyed them, and I've been able to find them and pick them up. So we'll be talking about those.
So if you like psych rock and you want to dive deeper,
these are some ones, I would suggest checking out.
Okay, let's dive in.
First, I want to start off with this one, and this one I think you gifted me. This is called Nuggets, and it's a compilation of just a bunch of psych rock bands, and some of them I've never even heard of, never even seen any of their albums, and some of them we'll see more of in this list. But if you're interested in getting into this and you don't even know where to start, this is a great option. There's a ton of songs on here. It's a double LP, and it has a wide range of psych rock.
See, I love that as a solution for for me. There's a Smithsonian jazz box set that I highly recommend to people that are just starting to dip their toe into jazz, because you're going to get 4 or 5 records. It is a comp, so you're not going to get a deep dive on any particular artist, but you're going to get an opportunity to sample a lot of different stuff in one sitting, and it's going to allow you to like kind of pick and choose what you like.
Yeah, give you a little taste of there. So on here we have like Electric Prunes, let's see, the Knickerbockers. Sorry, YouTube. Shadows of Night, the Castaways, Barbarians. But then we have other names like the Blues Magoos, Mojo Man, Nas, Nazz. Do you remember? Have you ever seen any of those?
No.
I've seen them around. I think I sold one, and now I wish I hadn't.
You wish you hadn't sold it.
Yeah,
that's the thing about
cool.
You really have to be careful about the psych rock stuff, in my opinion. It's like records like It's a Beautiful Day and some of these. You look at the cover, and the cover does not look like anything that you would be interested in.
Sometimes, and sometimes it's like that's a psych record.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We'll get a little deeper.
Yeah, we'll get into
But this is cool. This looks like the album cover art from the guy that did the Journey stuff.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Actually, I think there's a different art for this. There's different versions
of
the
this
art
of this particular
and
comic.
some are
Okay.
a little trippier than that.
Very
All right,
cool.
That's
Very cool.
All right, so we'll start with Love Forever Changes. So this album's really cool. It's kind of folky, but then it has all these like psychedelic elements in it. It's kind of someone I read somewhere that was described as a lush baroque pop tones with psychedelic touches.
Okay.
But if that means something to you,
then good.
There you go. So this is their third album and probably their most iconic.
This is an iconic psych rock band, a record, and it's one of those things that if you get into this genre, you're going to see this cover. It's going to pop up.
So if you see this, don't overlook it. It's pretty cool.
Again, sort of a nondescript, artsy kind of cover. I mean, again, it's not screaming to you psychedelia, but it's definitely interesting.
But it's a really great album. I enjoy listening to it, and having the original master recording is a nice touch too. It sounds amazing.
That's nice.
All right, this one I think a lot of people know.
Maybe not peeled.
Yeah, right. So this is the Velvet Underground and Nico. This is their debut album.
The Andy Warhol.
Yep. So lots of times you will see this with the actual banana peel on it, and the cool thing was you could like peel the banana off and
see where it says "peel slowly and see."
Yeah.
And I mean, this is.
You have this, right?
Yeah, I do. I have a modern repress of this record, and it still has the banana peel on it. Finding old versions of this record is getting harder and harder to do.
Yeah.
This is on that Verve label. Is that correct?
Yeah, on the Verve label. It's got the black one. I think the more valuable one's harder to find out with the blue label.
The blue label. Yeah,
this one was hard. There's a lot of pressings of this. This one was kind of hard to identify which one it was.
I think you'll have
but
that.
It is an older one, and the vinyl is in beautiful condition, and they got a pretty decent deal on it. So
nice.
I was glad to pick this up.
Yeah, this is one that, it just oozes with that sort of lo-fi psychedelia that Lou Reed became super known for. And it's one of the records that you wouldn't realize how much of it that you actually know.
Yeah.
Already,
Yeah, it is pretty iconic, but lots of times you're like, oh, that's on this album?
Yeah.
And there was some controversy over this record around, the lyrics and the content.
Sure.
Of, they talk pretty heavily and openly about drug use and various things. So,
yeah.
But again, this is pretty iconic. If you can find a copy, cool.
And again, we've been talking about this. They are really going back and repressing a lot of the iconic albums. Preferably, you can get them in some sort of audiophile pressings. I don't know that they've done an audiophile pressing.
No, I've seen just kind of the normal represses. I don't know.
But yeah, I have a 180 gram modern repress, and it sounds great.
Yeah,
so.
Those are nice.
Yeah.
All right, next
when you can't find the original, they're nice.
For a reasonable price, anyway. Yeah. This band is called Moby Grape. This came out in 1967. They're out of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of came out of that same scene as the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane and those guys. So
they just didn't play for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a good garage rocky thing. But then they have these cool guitar freakouts and kind of some weird sounds in there, and it's neat. This was kind of one of the first albums that coined the phrase art rock.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cool album. It's not hard to find. You see them around. They're not terribly expensive, and it's a good listen.
Some of the Moby Grape stuff is starting to eke up in value because of the collectors of this sort of psych rock stuff. Moby Grape, while they did not reach the commercial success level of bands like the Grateful Dead and even like Quicksilver Messenger Service, they were very much a part of that scene, that sort of Haight-Ashbury, Northern California scene. And they were doing, playing a lot of shows with those people. So you'll go back and see some of those posters that will be a Jefferson Airplane poster, but they're supported by Moby Grape or whatever. Yeah,
that's
cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, keep a lookout for that one. The next one, if you're into psych rock, you probably know about this one. This is the psychedelic sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators.
Texas band.
Yeah. So I was looking for this album. This is a modern repress, and it's kind of cool because it's on. It's really neat colored vinyl.
Oh, that's cool.
like that.
It kind of matches the cover too.
Yeah.
I like that.
But this is actually a really good sounding pressing.
Okay.
You know, and originals of this are very expensive. Very expensive.
I got so excited because I bought a pile of records from a gentleman when I first started collecting it. And even way back then, when I was just a new sort of like buyer kind of guy, I knew this album cover because it is sort of really famous in this corner of the world. And he had a copy, an original pressing of this in the pile, and I grabbed it, and I so excited I just kind of slid it into my pile that I think I paid $2 for it or something like that. And I got home and there's a fucking Bette Midler record in it, I swear to God. And I was like, no way. So I still have the cover, the original cover of it. So if anybody...
And you still just hold out against Bette Midler. Like,
how
could you do that to me?
How could you do that to me, Bette? Come on.
That would have been a sick one. So this, have you heard these guys?
Yeah, they're sort of lo-fi.
Yeah, they have really cool guitar sounds and great riffs, and their songs are really neat. The one thing that's interesting that might turn off people or people might like is the use of the electric jug.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of funny, like, gurgling, weird sound going through all their songs.
And that's the electric jug.
And I remember me and some friends were hanging out and we just put on some 13th floor elevators and everything. This is really cool, but that's weird. And they all noticed it. And I'm like, yeah, that is weird. But it's just part of their sound, and it's kind of cool, you know, if you get used to it. But at first, it takes you back, like, because
you don't know what it is.
Yeah, I haven't really heard any other bands use that in this kind of context. So it's
like Yoko singing in those John Lennon songs.
No, it's not. Not the same thing. But yeah, if you find an original press of this, good job. But if you can find the repress, which is even getting harder to find, check it out because it sounds really good.
Very cool.
Really good.
And to be clear, I'm a full supporter of Yoko. Just so you know. She wrote Imagine. You know, you guys are crazy to hate
Yoko, if you're watching.
Yoko,
it's fine.
I love it.
We're good. This one, this record's pretty cool. I was just listening to it today. This is a great psych record. I found this a couple times.
You find it.
And it's always just looks like it got ran over by a truck.
You usually don't find the mono original pressing, though. That's what you usually don't find.
And you pull it out and it's just beat up. And I actually found this at one of the last record shows I did. And I bought it in the parking lot. So I was unloading the car. And I walked by someone else's unloading. And I see this sitting there in one of their bins. It's the first record in their bin it's still in their truck. And I walk over. I'm like, hey, what's that? And because this is one I've been looking for, and like a nice copy, and he pulls it out, and it's beautiful. Yeah. And he sold it to me. He even gave me a deal in the parking lot
before you even got to the record show. Yeah.
And I'm like,
you gotta love that.
Thank you. My show.
We have been doing some more record shows this year, and I find that the community of sellers, as long as you don't, bump into the wrong guy or whatever. That's another story for another video. The community of sellers is by and large really awesome.
Cool, and they
really
like to work with you, and they like to work with other vendors too. And,
sure.
So I'm really happy to find a nice clean copy of this, and this thing is a banger. It sounds great.
This is one that you may actually find at a thrift store because it's such sort of a weird cover. People don't really know what it is. It gets buried in with some pumperdink or something like that, and you pull it out, and you might actually get yourself a decent copy.
So this is their second album. It's called Underground. I think their first album is still a little bit sought after too. So it'd be a nice one to find. So, and they have a good number. They put out a good number of albums.
And Electric Prunes, again, I mean, not just the similarity in the fruit choice, but they're like a Moby Grape. They didn't sort of reach that higher echelon of fame, but they were really well known and a really big.
And they're
big
on
part
those lists of when you talk about psych bands, stuff like that. You're gonna see the Electric Prunes. They're on that Nuggets record. So
yeah, for sure.
The next one, I love the name of this band, and Blues Magoos. This is their second album. Their first album was Psychedelic Lollipop.
That's the one I found.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to talk. Yeah, and so they're from the Bronx.
Okay. So East Coast psych.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So this is it's kind of bluesy sounding, and I remember I found a copy of this again. A beat up copy of it, and I'm looking at it, and it's so beat up I didn't even want to put it on my record player, but I'm like, this is probably amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I found a nice clean copy, so I just grabbed it at one of the local record stores. So
it's on that Mercury label. I love that. It's cool.
So this is they're a neat band. Again, they didn't get crazy big or anything, but yeah, check it out.
He's given you a lot of really good mid-level, interesting avenues to pursue. So just for what it's worth.
This one, it might be a little harder to find.
Just randomly scored this recently, right?
Yeah, it was just in a pile of records, and I was flipping through it, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know who Syd Barrett is.
This is definitely post Pink Floyd. Then.
Yeah, but like just after he left the band. If you look on this, so let's back up a little bit. So Syd Barrett, some people don't know, was the original singer and guitar player,
founding member
for Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, yeah.
Yeah, and David Gilmour came on, and I think they overlapped for a little while.
It was a very short overlap. Basically, Syd Barrett was going insane. He was taking a lot of LSD. There's some stories about where that was coming from and how that was, like his roommates was putting it on the food and stuff like that. So he didn't know when he was tripping and when he wasn't tripping. And there's this whole sort of story about the sort of fall of Syd Barrett, if you will. At one point, the story goes he collapsed on stage, and had happened many times before, and they chose to move on without him, and that's kind of how. Yeah, I'm being very brief in that sort of description.
Yeah, it's a long story.
But the band moved on from Syd Barrett, and in that time, David Gilmour had come on to play guitar, and obviously was an amazing guitarist, and the rest is history.
What's cool about this is this was actually produced by David Gilmour and Roger Waters.
I know that they kept up with him.
Yeah.
I know that they didn't just let him float off into the ether, as some people probably believe. But I don't know the sort of full detail of their relationship with Syd Barrett post Pink Floyd. I do not know.
So this is on that cool Harvest label. Sorry, it's upside down. And this is a UK press, I think. You don't see these around too much. But there's some weird stuff on here.
I'm sure.
Which you would think.
I'm sure.
But there's also some very cool stuff on here. So
yeah, I have to give that one a listen.
Yeah.
Interesting stories about Syd Barrett. Syd Barrett, roughly, loosely, the subject of The Wall, if you will. I mean, loosely.
This is The Seeds. This is. I don't know if this one's a compilation. I think this might be a compilation. But Seeds records are kind of pricey.
I've never even heard of them before.
Yeah. They're a psych band. They're out of L.A. They started in '65. They're just a good garage rock kind of psych band, and give them a listen. They're also on that Nuggets record. Mm-hmm. So if you want a taste of them, there. The Seeds.
The Seeds.
Check them out.
I'm interested.
And.
A couple more.
The last one of the last ones I'll talk about is this one, and I didn't know anything about this record when I found it, but I was in one of our at Second and Charles, and I was going through the funk and soul section, and I found this in there, and I'm like, I don't think this belongs. And
one of these is not like the others.
Yeah, and I don't know. They had it marked down real cheap, and I looked it up. I'm like, oh, this is worth more than whatever. Let me just grab it and see what it is. It turns out it's a psych record. Okay. It's a good psych rock record. And the band is called The Litter, and the album's called Emerge. At first I thought it was Emerge was the name of the band. Sure. And I looked it up, and I couldn't find anything. Or found too much stuff that wasn't this. Yeah. But this is their third album. It's kind of a neat pickup because I didn't know what it was, and it was a nice surprise. So I put it on, I'm like, oh, this is sweet. Mm-hmm. It's just a good rock, classic rock, garage rock, psych thing. Cool find.
Again, those last two I've never heard of even before. Everything else I'm at least mildly familiar with.
So we were talking earlier, there's actually a lot of modern psych rock still going today. This is stuff from the late 60s mostly, and kind of in the heyday of the psych rock movement, but there's still stuff going.
Not only that, but there are spaces, including in the Bay Area, where they continue. I mean, I'm friends with a band called The New Up, which is they're a modern psych rock band. Mm-hmm. Eric McFadden does modern psych rock stuff. And there's a lot of bands that have dabbled in that sort of jam, spacey, ethereal, all kinds of different stuff. Yeah. That's sort of the beauty of modern music, is that it's all a rich tapestry and it's all available to you at this point.
Right. And it's all heavily influenced by this stuff. Sure. There's one other album. This is the plus one, I guess. So that was my 10. That I wanted to talk about. about, and this, some people might know what this is. This is from the 90s. I don't know if you remember Mazzy Star.
Fade Into You.
Yeah, Fade Into You. That was the big song. And I picked this up recently, and I've been listening to it, and there's a lot of like psychedelic, trippy stuff on this album. It's really good. It's pretty low key, chill album, but it's really good.
That's great.
And I would recommend, like, people don't think of this as...
I wouldn't think of it as a psych opera.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's that song, yeah, whatever. This is great. So I just want to throw this in as a bonus. And
you find that a lot of like bands in the 90s that had singular hits, like nobody looked any deeper, like Blind Melon and stuff. All their stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
And you got to go a little bit deeper than just the top 40 hit, you know.
Yeah, and they are, like you're saying, they are repressing this stuff. Like, this is a modern press. I just picked it up like last month.
And let me tell you, if 2016 is any indication that this stuff will be hard to find in 4 or 5 years, I mean, we are seeing stuff, you know, Smashing Pumpkins records and stuff like that were pressed in 2016 going $200.
Yep.
You know, so if you are into this stuff and you are seeing it being repressed, don't hesitate to buy it.
Snag it when you see it.
Snag it when you see it,
because you never know, it could just jump.
And then it's gone, or then you're trying to find it, or you spend another, you know, it's
you don't
fine
miss
when
that
you
boat.
see it, you know? I hate to say that, but
so I mean, that's my list of psych rock. I hope that helped give people a little insight on what there is. Like I said, I'm not an expert on it, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that I missed.
Sure, you missed the Grateful Dead for sure, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And the Grateful Dead is an Americana classic rock institution. They're more of a movement, but they definitely had
go into that rabbit hole.
Well, they definitely have their psych rock roots. So I think your Jefferson Airplane, very much a part of that world. We even talked about Surrealistic Pillow before we started filming because it's very much a part of this list. But I think you did a really good job, man. This is cool. I appreciate this, and you've given me something to chew on.
Look out for.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Thanks.